In November 1956, the Mirage 3 would take its maiden flight. Even now, as we near its 70th anniversary, the Mirage continues to serve. It's been in many wars, taken many forms, and still fills a critical gap for the French military.
The Mirage 3 gave small air forces the chance to own a capable supersonic fighter on a budget. Then, in the Mirage F1, the world was offered a true multi-role platform. Today, the Mirage 2000 continues this legacy, affordable yet still able to hold its own against newer, more expensive platforms.
Yet in the 1970s, another aircraft was proposed. Referred to as the Mirage 4000, it was intended to be France's competitor to the F-15. While we never saw it enter production, it did fly, and from all accounts, it would have been an impressive fighter. So today, we look back at this jet, its origins, and what ultimately led to its unfortunate shelving.
In the mid-1970s, a dramatic shift would occur in aerial warfare. From the public reveal of the MiG-25 in 1967 to the experiences of pilots in Vietnam, several critical issues led America to rapidly draw up a new assortment of fighter aircraft using new design principles and logic. By 1975, several new fighters were under development, and one, the Tomcat, was already in service. The Soviets were likewise developing similar designs. This rapid leap to fourth-generation platforms was impressive. While older aircraft were not necessarily obsolete, the technology gap it created was arguably wider than at any other point up to that time. As we've discussed on this channel before, this was largely thanks to digital technology replacing analog equipment. Solid-state systems were more reliable and less prone to drift and inaccuracy. Newer internal suites made pilots' jobs easier, and advances in radar and guidance technology meant that beyond visual range combat was now effectively a reality. While in the past the choice had to be made between speed and agility, or between air combat and strike capabilities, newer, more advanced airframes were proving much greater flexibility. By the early 1980s, the US had the F-14, F-15, and F-16 in service. Leading the pack was the F-15, which was rapidly developed into several derivatives. The USSR quickly followed, with the MiG-29 in service by 1983 and the Su-27 by 1985. During this period in the mid to late 70s, French interest in domestically built alternatives grew. A formal request for proposal, followed by funding, was issued in 1975 for an agile, lightweight fourth-gen platform. This would become the Mirage 2000. However, Dassault had privately begun drawing up hypothetical rivals to the larger F-15, a more powerful air dominance platform. Using the Mirage 2000 as its basis, this new design would focus on both high-speed, high-altitude intercept and air dominance, while also featuring long-range strike capabilities. In this way, it would fill a critical gap that the Mirage 2000 couldn't address. This would become known as the Mirage 4000. To achieve this, a major overhaul of the initial Mirage design would be drawn up. The airframe would be larger, with a redesigned wing, canards, a cutting-edge lightweight carbon fiber composite fin structure, and, most importantly, a twin-engine configuration. On paper, it would be about the same size as the F-15. In fact, it was rumored that Dassault hoped the design would eventually compete with it on the export market. With strong capabilities on paper, the so-called Mirage 4000 was nonetheless expected to be expensive. Still largely self-funded, Dassault's hopes for the project were pinned on either an export customer from the Middle East or on the French government's growing need for newer fourth-generation fighters. The decision was made to construct an internal working demonstrator, which would then be presented to customers either privately or at air shows. Likely for time and cost reasons, this proof of concept would use an assortment of existing internal systems. In this way, it would primarily exist to demonstrate the airframe and its performance capabilities. During this initial period before construction, the Saudis began to show interest in the platform. Likewise, Iran, then under the Shah, also supposedly expressed interest in the preliminary proposal. In the latter case, the Iranian Revolution would end any hope of procurement, while in the former, US approval of F-15 sales in 1978 temporarily diverted Saudi attention. Regardless, the Mirage 4000 would be rolled out for the first time at the 1979 Paris Air Show. Within its first few flights, the Mirage was already setting impressive benchmarks. Powered by two Snecma 53s, the aircraft first flew on the 9th of March 1979. On its sixth flight, it reached Mach 2. This was followed by a flight that Dassault claimed reached 50,000 feet at Mach 2 in just under 4 minutes, and reportedly demonstrated an initial climb rate of approximately 60,000 feet per minute. This was a good indication that, even in this preliminary form, it could be a capable interceptor, especially given that production variants would likely have used the M53P2 engine. Aerodynamically, it would also mark a step forward for the French. While Dassault had long favoured the classic delta wing design, by the 70s, the weaknesses of that configuration were well understood. In the past, it was favoured for good pitch stability and performance at supersonic speeds. Among fourth-generation fighters, high landing speeds, poor agility at low speeds, and poor energy retention were significant problems. Given range concerns, the Mirage 4000's wing would scale for a larger airframe, and the addition of forward canards would drastically change both agility and low-speed handling. Overall, the platform was impressive. Reportedly capable of carrying more than twice the fuel of the Mirage 2000, it would feature 11 hardpoints, similar to the F-15 and Su-27. Able to carry air-to-air and air-to-ground missiles, rockets, anti-ship and anti-runway munitions, laser-guided and iron bombs, targeting pods, and other weapons. Internally, it would integrate the Thompson CSF RDM used on the Mirage 2000, although if it entered development, it was presumed to receive its own unique system. According to Dassault, the aircraft's top speed would have been Mach 2.2, with a projected service ceiling of around 65,600 feet and a range of 2,000 kilometers. Combat range, however, was more realistically in the 1,000 to 1,500 kilometer range. With a 12-meter wingspan and an 18.7-meter length, it would be only slightly smaller than the F-15. In parallel, Dassault was developing concepts for a new multirole fighter. In December 1977, the French Air Force asked the Aeronautical Construction Department to investigate a replacement for the Jaguar, leading to proposals including a new multirole platform from Dassault. Soon after, in the early 1980s, the Future European Fighter Aircraft (FIFA) program was launched. A collaborative vision, it aimed to conceptualize and produce a new fighter. Put bluntly, the FIFA program would end for France in 1985 over disagreements. France wanted to lead the project and emphasized naval capabilities, while the other nations put forward an early proposal for the Eurofighter, which the French disliked. The other nations continued the project as the European Fighter Aircraft. Consequently, France would redirect efforts towards its own domestic projects, one of which would be the ACX, later the Rafale. In 1986, the Rafale A would fly for the first time, archaic compared with the production aircraft, but promising nonetheless. Then, in 1987, both the Rafale and Mirage demonstrators would fly together. That same year, the Mirage project would take a decisive turn. During the project's conceptual phase, the Saudi government expressed interest in the project. While they had favored the F-15, the acquisition process had proved difficult, with 62 aircraft delivered from 1982, all of which were downgraded. Further diversifying their air force remained a high priority, and French openness to selling their own aircraft with less politics made Dassault's project attractive. It was rumored in the press that the Saudis proposed purchasing 100 of the new Mirages. Yet there were still problems. While the Mirage was flying as a demonstrator, development of its internal systems had not yet begun. Held back by Dassault's limited budget, creating, integrating and testing these systems would take time and money, on top of what was already a costly airframe. Given its strong experience, Dassault's likelihood of success was high, but without a proven product to compete with the F-15, potential customers were likely hesitant. While the F-15 was expensive, even the downrated export model was capable. and combat-ready. France's defense minister, André Giraud, would direct their attention to the Rafale A, preferring it over the Mirage. While the details remain unclear, Saudi interest existed, but ultimately a French aircraft purchase was, at that time at least, ruled out. Ironically, the French Defense Ministry's own disinterest in the Mirage may have played a role in scuttling the deal. Having just signed a deal for 72 new Tornadoes for a strike role, the Saudis' need was clearly to bolster the F-15 fleet with an equivalent. Thus, we can guess that the French push to sell a multirole platform instead was misplaced. Either way, with no prospective customers, the Mirage 4000 project was effectively ended. Had it been purchased, it remains uncertain how it would have affected the Rafale program, or how it would have compared or complemented it. Without funding to properly develop the internal systems, it's not really possible to assess whether the Mirage would have matched the Rafale. Had France ordered the Mirage 4000, even in limited numbers, it would have signaled state confidence and likely strengthened its export prospects. In that scenario, the Rafale program may have faced delays or reduced priority. France still required a new carrier-capable fighter, but Dassault's engineering focus and political capital might have shifted towards supporting the larger Mirage. The Rafale A demonstrator was significantly larger than the eventual production aircraft, and the transition to a smaller operational variant could have complicated perceptions of continuity and commitment. In the ideal scenario, if the budget permitted, both aircraft would have been adopted. If the Mirage design had panned out as intended, this would have given the French both a capable Navy aircraft and a high-low option for the Air Force, similar to the F-15 F-16 pairing in the US. According to Dassault, the Mirage 4000 was predicted to have better flight characteristics at both subsonic and supersonic speeds than the F-15. However, this was never proven. The Mirage 4000 was nonetheless expected to be costly, with no customers and no real government support. The project became infeasible. The Rafale concept offered more in the realm of naval capabilities while still meeting Air Force needs if necessary. Importantly, the French government actually wanted it, and this alone may have been the deciding factor in its success and the Mirage's failure. In like manner, the smaller Mirage 2000 was deemed sufficient by the military. While lacking the edge that the 4000 could have offered, the gap between the two designs was deemed less crucial than the price difference.
Even with its scale and promise, the Mirage 4000 was ultimately a product without a sponsor. In the absence of firm state backing, even the most capable airframe becomes just a demonstrator rather than a program. Only one prototype was built, and without orders, it had nowhere to go.
Yet its story did not end on the flight line. The aerodynamic lessons, systems thinking, and composite experimentation that shaped the 4000 were carried forward into the next generation. When the Dassault Rafale emerged, it did so in part on foundations laid by this abandoned giant. The Mirage 4000 was never fielded, never exported, and never tested in combat, but it was not wasted. It was a bridge, an ambitious privately funded step between the Mirage lineage and the fully realized multirole doctrine France would later perfect. Thanks for watching. Our videos are researched, written and produced by a small team of filmmakers dedicated to bringing you accurate military aviation history from around the world. Please consider supporting us by joining our merch and members site for early access, bonus content and merch discounts. Or become a YouTube channel member for early access, or simply hit subscribe. Your support means everything.